and the Family may have redefined television comedy, but behind Carroll O'Connor's groundbreaking performance was a cast marked by heartbreak, devastating loss, and tragedy that mirrored the very social struggles they portrayed on screen. Fame did not save them. In fact, for many, it magnified personal demons and exposed wounds that would never heal. Nearly 47 years after the final episode aired, their stories remain so haunting that once you hear them, you'll never watch this classic the same way again. From a father's unimaginable loss to the cruel silence of forgotten legends, from battles with disease to the bitter irony of success masking unbearable pain, the real lives behind 704 Hauser Street were far darker than any script Norman Lear could have written. These are the stories Hollywood tried to forget. Carroll O'Connor, the father who lost everything. Carroll O'Connor was born on August 26, 1924, in Manhattan, New York. He was 47 years old when he stepped into the role of Archie Bunker, the lovably bigoted patriarch who would become one of television's most iconic characters. At that moment, O'Connor was an accomplished stage actor who had spent years honing his craft in theater and minor film roles, but nothing could have prepared him for the fame that would consume the next 3 decades of his life. But behind the laughter and the Emmy Awards lay a father's worst nightmare. O'Connor's relationship with his adopted son Hugh was the center of his world, yet it would become the source of his most devastating pain. Hugh O'Connor, himself an actor who appeared alongside his father in the Heat of the Night, had been battling drug addiction for years. Carroll fought desperately to save his son, financing rehabilitation programs and offering unconditional support, but addiction proved to be a merciless adversary. The warning signs were always there: the relapses, the desperate phone calls, the hollow promises of getting clean, but nothing could prepare Carroll for what would come on March 28, 1995. That day, Hugh called his father to say goodbye. He said he believed he could not beat his drug addiction and could not face another rehabilitation program. Carroll immediately called the police, who raced to Hugh's Pacific Palisades home, but they arrived just moments too late. Hugh O'Connor shot himself in the head at the age of 32, ending his life while his father listened helplessly on the phone. As the years passed, Carroll O'Connor transformed his grief into a crusade. He publicly vilified the drug supplier he believed had enabled his son's addiction, even facing a slander lawsuit that he ultimately won. Yet the victory felt hollow. He appeared before Congress, advocating for stricter drug laws, but no legislation could bring Hugh back. O'Connor continued working, reprising his role in the Heat of the Night. But colleagues reported that the sparkle had left his eyes. He carried the weight of survivor's guilt, the cruel question of what more he could have done, the unbearable burden of a parent who outlived his child. Through the late 1990s, his health began to deteriorate. Diabetes, which he had managed for years, worsened. His heart, both literally and metaphorically, was failing. Carroll O'Connor died on June 21, 2001, at the age of 76 from a heart attack due to complications from diabetes. He passed away in his Culver City home, surrounded by family but forever haunted by the son he couldn't save. A tragic fate for someone who brought laughter to millions, yet spent his final years drowning in grief. A father who portrayed America's complicated patriarch, but couldn't protect his own child from the darkness that consumed him. Jean Stapleton, the woman who disappeared into a role. Jean Stapleton was born Jean Murray on January 19, 1923 in Manhattan, New York. She was 48 years old when she stepped into the role of Edith Bunker, the sweet, naive, and endlessly patient wife who became television's most beloved housewife. Stapleton was an accomplished Broadway actress with decades of stage experience, yet she would become so identified with Edith that her own identity would nearly vanish beneath the character's floral house dresses and Queen's accent. Yet beneath the surface of success lay a quiet struggle that few understood. Stapleton had poured everything into Edith, winning 3 Emmy Awards in the hearts of an entire nation, but the role became a prison of expectations. While critics praised her comedic timing and emotional depth, Stapleton privately wrestled with being typecast, with being seen only as the ditzy housewife rather than the serious dramatic actress she had trained to be. She had dreams of returning to Broadway, of playing Shakespeare and Chekhov, of being recognized for her range beyond the Bunker living room. In interviews late in her career, She confessed that playing Edith, while rewarding, had also destroyed other opportunities. Directors couldn't see her as anyone else. Casting agents stopped calling for dramatic roles. The character that made her famous had also limited her legacy. As the years passed, Stapleton retreated from the spotlight. After All in the Family ended in 1979, she guest starred on the spin-off Archie Bunker's Place, but insisted that her character be killed off. Edith died from a stroke off-screen, a shocking end for such a beloved figure. Stapleton wanted to move on, but the shadow of Edith followed her. Through the 1980s and 1990s, she took occasional television roles and performed in theater productions, but she never achieved the same level of recognition. Friends described her as intensely private, someone who valued her personal life above career ambitions. Yet there was a melancholy to her later years, a sense that she had given so much of herself to one character that there was little left for anything else. Her health remained stable well into her 80s, but by 2013, she had largely withdrawn from public life. Jean Stapleton died on May 31, 2013, at the age of 90 from natural causes in her Manhattan apartment. She passed peacefully, but the irony remained cruel. The woman who portrayed one of television's most memorable characters spent her final decades fighting to be remembered as more than just Edith Bunker, a battle she ultimately lost. In death as in life, she was America's favorite housewife, trapped forever in the role that both defined and confined her. Rob Reiner, a life cut short by tragedy. Robert Reiner was born on March 6, 1947 in the Bronx, New York, the son of legendary comedian and actor Carroll O'Connor. He was 24 years old when he stepped into the role of Michael "Meathead" Stivic, Archie Bunker's liberal son-in-law, who represented the voice of the younger, progressive generation. Reiner brought authenticity to the role, his own political beliefs aligning perfectly with Michael's passionate activism, creating some of television's most memorable ideological battles. But behind the success and the later acclaim as a brilliant film director lay personal struggles that few outside his inner circle understood. Reiner had battled weight issues throughout his adult life, often yo-yoing between diets and health regimens while managing the stress of Hollywood's demanding pace. His first marriage to actress-director Penny Marshall ended in divorce in 1981, leaving emotional scars that took years to heal. Though he found love again with photographer Michelle Singer in 1989, the pressures of maintaining a dual career as actor and director took their toll. Reiner directed masterpieces like The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, and A Few Good Men. But success came with exhausting production schedules, creative battles with studios, and the constant pressure to top his previous work. Through the 2000s and 2010s, friends noticed that Reiner seemed increasingly tired, though he remained politically outspoken and engaged. As the years passed, Reiner became more vocal in his political activism, particularly against the Trump administration, earning him both admirers and vicious critics. The online harassment took a toll on his mental health, though he rarely spoke about it publicly. Through 2025, Reiner remained active, but those close to him noticed a weariness, a sense that the battles, both professional and political, had drained something essential from him. Then on the evening of December 14, 2025, police received a call about a disturbance at Reiner's Brentwood home in Los Angeles. When officers arrived, they made a devastating discovery that would shock the entertainment world. Rob Reiner died on December 14, 2025 at the age of 78, found dead alongside his wife Michelle in their Los Angeles home under circumstances that authorities initially investigated as a suspected homicide. The tragedy sent shockwaves through Hollywood, with tributes pouring in from actors, directors, and politicians. A cruel twist for a man who brought joy to millions through both his acting and directing. The boy who grew up in comedy royalty, who became television's favorite liberal conscience, who directed some of cinema's most beloved films, met an ending that was neither scripted nor fair. The investigation would continue for months, but for the All in the family, it was another devastating loss, another reminder that fame offers no protection from life's darkest moments. Mike Evans, the voice that faded into silence. Michael Jonas Evans was born on November 3, 1949, in Salisbury, North Carolina. He was 22 years old when he stepped into the role of Lionel Jefferson, the intelligent and quick-witted son of George and Louise Jefferson, who often served as a bridge between the Bunker and Jefferson households. Evans was not only an actor, but also a gifted writer. He co-created the groundbreaking sitcom Good Times with Eric Monte, proving his creative talents extended far beyond performing. Yet beneath the success lay an artist who struggled to find his place in an industry that often discarded black talent once their initial novelty faded. After leaving All in the Family, Evans should have enjoyed a thriving career. He had writing credentials, acting experience, and connections throughout Hollywood. But the roles dried up. The phone stopped ringing as frequently. He returned to the Jeffersons later in its run, reprising his role as Lionel, but the character had been recast during his absence, and his return felt like a backward step rather than a triumphant comeback. Through the 1980s and 1990s, Evans worked sporadically, appearing in minor television roles and struggling to reclaim the momentum he once had. Friends and colleagues described him as talented, but quietly frustrated, someone who had tasted success early, only to watch it slip away without explanation. As the years passed, Evans faced not only professional disappointments, but also a health crisis that he kept largely private. By the early 2000s, he had developed throat cancer, a devastating diagnosis for someone whose voice had once commanded attention on one of television's most watched shows. The treatment was brutal: radiation, chemotherapy, the slow deterioration of his body and spirit. He fought courageously but privately, avoiding the spotlight even as his health failed. His family rallied around him, but the cancer was aggressive and unforgiving. Through 2006, Evans grew weaker, eventually returning to his mother's home in 29 Palms, California, seeking comfort in his final days. Mike Evans died on December 14, 2006, at the age of 57 from throat cancer at his mother's home. He passed away far from the Hollywood lights, largely forgotten by an industry that had once celebrated his talent. A heartbreaking decline for someone who helped create Good Times and brought life to Lionel Jefferson. The creative force who should have enjoyed decades more of success found himself silenced, his voice literally stolen by disease, his legacy overshadowed by the very shows he helped build. Sherman Hemsley, the unlikely star who died alone. Sherman Alexander Hemsley was born on February 1, 1938, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He was 35 years old when he first appeared on All in the Family as George Jefferson, the brash, ambitious dry-cleaning entrepreneur who became one of television's most memorable characters. Hemsley's portrayal was so dynamic that it spawned The Jeffersons, one of the most successful spin-offs in television history, running for 11 seasons and making Hemsley a household name. But behind the confident strut and the sharp one-liners lay a deeply private man who struggled with loneliness and health issues that he kept hidden from the public. Hemsley never married, never had children, and maintained an almost reclusive lifestyle despite his fame. Friends described him as generous but guarded, someone who seemed to carry an invisible weight. After The Jeffersons ended in 1985, Hemsley continued working in television and film, but the roles grew smaller and less frequent. Through the 1990s and 2000s, he appeared in occasional guest spots in stage productions, but financial struggles plagued him. He filed for bankruptcy, losing much of what he had earned during his peak years. The industry that had celebrated him offered little in his later years. As the years passed, Hemsley's health began to fail in ways that remained largely invisible. He had been diagnosed with lung cancer, though he rarely discussed it publicly. The disease was aggressive, slowly suffocating him as a tumor obstructed his superior vena cava, a large vein carrying blood to the heart. He continued performing when he could, but by 2012 he had relocated to El Paso, Texas, seeking a quieter life away from Hollywood's scrutiny. He lived alone in a modest home, his days marked by medical appointments and the slow realization that time was running out. On July 24, 2012, neighbors noticed they hadn't seen him in days. Sherman Hemsley died on July 24, 2012, at the age of 74 from superior vena cava syndrome, a complication of lung cancer, found alone in his El Paso home. His body remained unclaimed for weeks as legal disputes over his estate erupted, delaying his burial for months in a cruel postscript to a life spent entertaining millions. A tragic fate for someone who made Moving On Up a cultural anthem. The man who portrayed one of television's most successful black characters died isolated, struggling financially, his body trapped in legal limbo as strangers fought over whatever little he left behind. Nearly 47 years after All in the Family ended its revolutionary run, the show remains a television masterpiece that forever changed how America talked about race, class, politics, and family. Yet the real lives behind it are far more tragic than any episode could capture. From Carroll O'Connor's devastating loss of his son to Gene Stapleton's quiet struggle for artistic identity, from Rob Reiner's shocking and untimely death to Mike Evans' forgotten battle with cancer, from Sherman Hemsley's lonely final days to the countless other cast members who faced their own private demons. Every member of this groundbreaking ensemble carried a story the cameras never captured. Behind the laughter were tears. Behind the fame was loneliness. Behind the success was struggle. These were real people who brought fictional characters to life, but whose own lives were marked by pain that no script could resolve, no director could fix, and no audience could heal. Which journey struck you the most? Comment below and don't forget to subscribe as we continue uncovering the forgotten truths behind Hollywood's greatest legends, because sometimes the real story is the one they never wanted you to know.